Jeff Manchester, Manchester Music. Welcome. What you just heard was a cue that at least half of it anyway was made with the latest solo instrument library from Native Instruments in collaboration with E Instruments, and it's called Stradivari or Stradivari. I'm not really sure, but I try to use it in a cue. If you've been to this channel before, you know that I like to put things in the context of an actual piece of music if I'm going to review it or talk about it, and not just like go through the articulations and call it a day. Really helps to know the value of something if you're actually going to, see how it works when you're trying to make music with it, which is what we're doing, right, as composers. So I tried to use as much of the library as I could. I was influenced a lot by Nicholas Bertel's score for Moonlight, which is just incredible. And I have some things to say about how I wish this library could kind of help me do some of the things that he does in that score. But let's just talk about what this library is. You can watch the marketing materials that Native put out. They slowed down traffic in Italy to record this thing. It's 300 years old. And so it's just a really kind of special thing. And also it's great to see a solo violin from Native, or a solo kind of instrument from Native. People will correct me if I've gotten this wrong, but I think this is maybe one of their first solo instruments. So this might mean that if this does well, we might get a solo cello, viola, you name it, which is kind of cool. So I don't compose with a lot of solo things before, so this was a bit of a stretch for me to kind of figure out how best to utilize this tool, make the most of it, and kind of make it work for me. Why don't we just go through the different things that I did, and we can kind of talk about the articulations of the violin. The first here is the intervals, and that's just me going between two notes. And I will solo that. Let's take a listen to it. Here it is in the mix. So very natural. I use the sustained finger articulation here, which comes when you open this little 3-dot thing. You get all the kind of articulations. You get key switching, a bunch of other cool little ways of playing the instrument: sustain, marcato, détaché, and then you get the virtuoso, which is what we're going to talk about soon too. Maybe one of the biggest selling features of this library. And you can see all the short, expressive, dynamic, and special articulations too. And then you can kind of assign them down here. If you prefer to work with key switches, you'll see these ones are all kind of empty. That's up to you to kind of bring some in. If you prefer to play with key switches, you can also affect the dynamics and the vibrato. This is very kind of comprehensive. You get different vibrato styles, the rate of, I guess, if you want to call it the oscillation, or that kind of, that kind of vibrato, right? You can change that too. You can automate all this stuff, of course. So it's very comprehensive. I didn't use too much on this particular section of the track, but this just gives you a kind of walkthrough of the library itself. There's two flavors of the library. You can either bring in the lightweight version, which doesn't have the mic positions, or you can bring in the kind of heavyweight version, which does. And that's why you'll see multi-mic in here. If I click this open, you'll see that we have access to close, mid, and far microphones. And you can also bring up the room noise, which I think sounds really great. So on some of the articulations you'll see in this cue, I did bring the room noise up. And this just gives you control, I guess, over the presence of the instrument, depending on where you want it in your mix. If you're going to use a number of instances, you can have some be really close and some be a little bit far away and some be kind of halfway, just to give you some kind of dynamics when you're doing this stuff. So that's the first kind of articulation in this track. I think if we go over here, I might have more intervals. Let's just check on what this sounds like. Okay, so this is poorly labeled. This is the tremolo bode, which again, you just get to by clicking here, and then now we're in the expressive column. Earlier we were in long, so this just sounded really nice to me. And I just messed it up. Let's go back here. And you can change the speed. So now it's kind of double time. There we go. So it's a very simple, clean interface, but it's very easy to understand, oh, what if I move this up or down speed? That must mean it does that. So really easy to understand. I was able to get around pretty quickly and just very kind of easy to use. Again, I'm not a big solo violin guy. I don't play violin. So a lot of this stuff was just like, oh, what does this do? What does that do? Which I suspect is going to be an experience for a lot of other folks too. The pros out there, I'm curious if this library did it for you. Because for me, I was like, oh, this is a cool library, cool heritage of the violin, but I don't know what I'm doing. So, the next section here, I think, will be the most important to people, and that's the Virtuoso, which I type out here, Virtuoso kind of adaptive articulation playing style. And this is, I think, what people are going to judge this library based on. How well does this perform? And this is basically, the kind of like auto intelligent version of the library where you just kind of play stuff, and it's not playing now, but so you can play this like you would if you're just trying to play in real time. I thought it worked very well. Let's have a listen to something that I wrote. Just soloing in and out. One thing I really liked about this articulation is you'll notice as you press down on the MIDI keyboard, you'll get that portamento, that really nice kind of transition between notes that doesn't sound, that sounds very natural. You'll see as I go up here, I could do it this way. That sounds natural, but I could also kind of hammer on the note here with my MIDI keyboard. There we go. And also, if I have my hand on the pitch wheel, see as I go up, we get a nice kind of staccato and pizzicato here. But if I leave it here in the center, we get our nice kind of like long sustained notes. So that's just a little kind of preview of how it's like to play this. You can also change the legato style over here if a different kind of mode suits your kind of playing preference. But that is a really quick kind of preview of the adaptive virtuoso mode, which again, I think because this territory, this sample library is so red ocean, there's like stuff from, I can't even remember all the companies that do solo violins now. People are going to be going to this and seeing if it works for them and deciding, oh, cool, this is better than that company or that product or whatever. Let's keep moving here to, I think, another section where I had even higher transitions in the notes here. I'm just opening up my automation in Logic by pressing A. I'll close it now. Let's have a listen to this one. Just really simple, nice and airy and thin at the top. If I go to the mic position, I probably had, the far all the way down. I had the room noise up and all the action was here with the close and the mid mics. And it sounds like this when you actually listen to the whole thing. It's not going to catch all the MIDI, so just be aware of that. I'm playing it from here. Now, of course, no cue would be complete without something pizzicato. And if I go down to this section, we have what really starts this cue. Again, really simple. The room is all the way up. I guess I took the close and mids down. I wanted to sound really far away, so that's why the far mics are still up. But the room noise is great. Let's see if you can hear that, by the way. I'm going to turn the room noise up and down. Let's see if I'll just get a loop going, and maybe this will, if you've got some good headphones, you can hear this. Let's try turning it off. Here's the room noise, just nothing but room noise. There we go. So I thought that sounded really nice. The dynamics sort of like took the wheel here automatically, and we got some nice kind of variation between each of the strikes. And let's keep going over to a more expressive articulation, the saltasto. Not sure if I'm pronouncing this right. Let's try a few different articulations, knowing that we're going to land back on saltasto, but let's start with the sol pont. So, I mean, I could have chose that. Harmonics. And the last one here. That's it. Let's go back to saltasto. Now, there's also some very expressive, almost like sound designy articulations in the library. And one of them was the ricochet here, which I have happening in the kind of second half of this cue. It sounds like this on its own. There's some panning automation too, so it'll kind of dance between your ears. That's me, not the library. So really kind of nice. This is what it sounds like in the mix. And that side of the expressive articulation section. I should also mention that you've got, if you go to the position here, again, I'm not a violin guy. You can alter between the high strings and the low strings as it plays. You can have it automatically switch between the two of them. I'm not really sure how this algorithm works, or you can just force it to stick with high strings or low strings. There is an audible difference. I don't want to spend this time. Ruben did a great video on Native to show this, but just so you can see that you can do this. Let's keep going over here. Actually, I think that's pretty much it. If you guys want, like, I'll just spend the rest of this video going through the rest of the stuff that I have. I have Noir from Native that's kind of playing underneath, and this is kind of just copied MIDI from the pizzicato MIDI here. In the mix. I have under here, this is a Hammersmith. This is a much cleaner piano. I like it from Sonic Couture, and it sounds like this. Underneath, another Hammersmith, just adding those low notes. For whatever reason, I could have done them on this track up here, but I just didn't. And this is just kind of adding our low end, our bass. It's nice and distorted. It's going through a tape machine. Some bass shorts, and this is from Orchestral Tools. Anyway, we just keep going down here, and I don't want you to look here because I have a secret sample library that I'm going to talk about a little later that's not actually out yet. So what do I think of this library? I mean, I think it's great. I'm coming from more Bohemian, whatever the Bohemian violin or whatever is called from. Oh my gosh, I'm blanking now. Bohemian Violin from Vera Harmonic. I'm coming from that library. I really like that library. This library is great too. This one gives Kontakt users a chance to kind of get something really special for Kontakt, as that library is for another kind of sampling system. But there's other people coming from the Joshua Bell stuff. That might be the Embertone one. Again, I'm not a big solo violin person, so I'm curious to know what you guys think, if this kind of exceeded your expectations or whatever. I think it sounds beautiful. I think it is really easy to use and understand. I like some of the technology behind it that kind of switches between the higher, the low notes. I really like how detailed you can be with the vibrato and stuff like that. I thought that the Virtuoso articulation or section or whatever you want to call it was pretty smart. I think I prefer the Bohemian Violin one just because if you press the keys at the right time, you can get those pizzicato notes. You don't have to kind of play with a pitch wheel. It's a small trade-off. It's just a preference. Some people kind of want to just work with expressive long sustained notes and then go to pizzicato or staccato or whatever, on their own terms. And you can do that with this library. The one thing, and if you're listening E instruments, that I would really, really, really like is for there to be some way that one could program without having to go to the patch, section and articulations, pre-baked ones. I'd like to be able to do octave runs and arpeggios with a library like this. Let's put it back on the screen here. With a library like Stradivari, because I find that when I program them myself, they never really sound real or authentic. And this is something that I tried to do. I'm actually going to open another session where I tried to do this and I was unsuccessful. And perhaps this is just because I don't know how to program MIDI well, but you'll see what I mean here. All right, so here we go. So I was really inspired. Again, I'm not going to play this because then it'll demonetize the video, but this is from the Moonlight soundtrack by Nicholas Britell. The track that I wanted to kind of emulate some of the arpeggios and the runs in Middle of the World, which was an incredible kind of marquee cue from that picture. But you'll see that I tried to do it on my own and it doesn't sound that good. And again, maybe this is like user error, but here's me trying to do some really quick human kind of arpeggios and runs, and it just doesn't work for me. So I really struggled. So those sound like MIDI. They sound like MIDI runs. And I was trying the best I could to kind of pick the right articulation. And I shortened and lengthened the MIDI notes here in Logic. I did everything I could to kind of get that really smooth kind of arc. And I just wasn't able to do it. So perhaps a feature request, something that could allow you to intelligently program and realistically program those runs, those big sweeping runs, the likes of which you would hear in a track like Middle of the World. Please go listen to it from the Moonlight soundtrack. Another thing that I'd like to see is some kind of ostinato kind of creator. I know Spitfire has one, and of course Sono Kinetic have ostinato, which is just that. It'd be good to get that in because I think the sound of this violin, it might be like it's a first chair violin, Jeff. It's a solo violin. They don't really do ostinatos. I don't know. But it'd be really great if there could be some kind of like rhythm composer. Perhaps I missed it in this section. I don't think I did though. That allowed you to kind of do more kind of pulsing rhythmic stuff. So rhythmic stuff and, big kind of modal runs and arpeggios that sound really realistic and beautiful would be great. Right now for sustained stuff and solo stuff, the Virtuoso adaptive articulation is wonderful, but I'd like to see where they take this library from here. My suspicion is that they're probably going to do a cello and a bunch of different ones before they kind of bring it back and revamp this. But I think this is a great debut of a solo instrument for native. Great job, E Instruments. It sounds great. Let me know what you think, though, as always, in the comments. I'll see you later.